Hello and welcome to this presentation on how and why should leaders manage energy for change. My name is Rosanna Hunt and I work in the Horizons team, which is part of NHS England, and helped to develop the Energy for Change model in the Institute for Innovation and Improvement in 2011. So this presentation covers some detail about the model, but also looks at some of the current issues that are faced within teams and in organisations in the NHS in particular, and looks at ways in which managers and leaders can use the Energy for Change model to increase energy for change, to build motivation, and to reduce some of the issues that are commonly reported by teams. And we'll have a look at some of that. So this presentation should take about 20 minutes max, and I want to start out with this research from the Royal Society of Medicine, from the Journal of the Royal Society of Medicine, which is about burnout in surgeons and organisational interventions that are helping with this. I think when we look at, the worst case scenario is for the imbalance of energy is burnout. And this article highlights the fact that work overload is the main cause of burnout. The solutions that this article suggests to tackle burnout and to manage physical energy, as it were, is flexible working arrangements and reduction of working hours as ways that will improve productivity and help to maintain higher quality performance. It's interesting that in some professional groups we see burnout. In other professional groups we see rising levels of sickness rates. People deal with these stressors in different ways, and for some it's more traumatic than others, I think. Burnout, as I say, is the worst case scenario, but it is the responsibility for managers to manage energy. What are some of the team issues that are commonly reported at the moment that are leading to stresses? One of those is hierarchy. There is a difficulty in getting things done and making change happen because of blockages in the hierarchy, and there is a need to break down some of those blockages because of the frustrations it causes. Structure is another issue that is commonly reported, and this is a sort of insight that we are too rigid around the boundaries of our roles to be able to work effectively as a team. Stress is also commonly reported, and there can be various causes of stress, but there is rarely a team approach to managing stress, and often it results in issues that are left underneath the table and aren't openly discussed in teams. Behaviour is also commonly reported, so there is a lot of reporting through interviews that I've done with teams around intolerable behaviour or unprofessional behaviour that isn't tackled. And often that behaviour is due to those stressors. There's a recognition that actually there's a huge remit, there's too much work, there is a huge list of things that need to get done and a depleting resource. And so that exacerbates the stress, the behaviour, the inoperability of the hierarchy and the structure, because it's time for everybody to pull together and get things done rather than in silos or in different levels of the hierarchy. And it also impacts on decision-making. So decision-making was an issue that has come out in two of the teams that I've interviewed around the issues that they're experiencing. And there's a real sort of desire to increase the inclusiveness of the individuals involved in decision-making, so that it isn't something that only happens at the top of the organisation. And indeed, if it is left there, then the important decisions don't get to be made often. At least that's how it feels from people who have a different perspective on the organisation from a different level of the hierarchy. So getting decisions made is often a frustrating factor for people lower down in the hierarchy. So why is energy the answer to this? Why should leaders focus on managing energy? Well, This is because our sort of common approach, leadership approach, is to focus on just one energy driver, and that is the physical energy driver. That is, we have this huge remit, we need to get things done, and this is how I'm going to incentivize or motivate you to get things done. Of course, leaders can use intrinsic or extrinsic motivators to get things done, and when we're extrinsically motivated, we're motivated to win external rewards or to avoid punishment, and that is a common approach to managing physical energy, is to provide an external reward or suggest that there may be a disincentive happening if this isn't done ASAP. Intrinsic drivers are when we're motivated to win internal rewards. And, of course, we do try to do that, don't we? When we're trying to motivate other people to get on board with a piece of work, well, we do try to look at ways in which it might meet their internal objectives and goals and career aspirations or just areas of interest. There are advantages to using both types of motivators. Of course, extrinsic rewards can get you interested in something that you have no interest in. So it is important, but there's just an imbalance of ways of managing this kind of energy, physical energy, in that activities, it very much feel like work rather than play, and there are many ways of creating environments for open innovation and so on to create new solutions, think differently about problems by creating more of a play environment than a work environment and getting people's intrinsic interest in resolving the issues. Here are some other energies that we also need to pay attention to, and many of these do play very much to the intrinsic drivers that we've just been discussing. Physical energy, I've already mentioned, the energy of action, getting things done. We can manage those energies in other people by providing extrinsic and intrinsic rewards, but it's far easier in a way just to go for the extrinsic rewards, or at least it feels like the quicker way to get things done. But there are other energies that need to be managed. There's the social energy. And when teams have a really good sense of connection between people and a real sense of us, they are more likely to be effective because they feel part of a group who are committed to each other to get something achieved. And of course, anybody who plays a team sport or is involved in anything else extracurricular, a sewing group where you feel like if you don't turn up, then you're letting down the rest of the group. We'll know how compelling social energy is, that you feel highly motivated to be part of a social group and to make your contribution to it because of the rewards that you get from that as well. So we'll talk a bit later about how leaders can manage social energy in teams. Spiritual energy is the next energy, which is the energy of commitment to a common vision for the future, driven by shared values and a higher purpose. This is about getting people moving towards a different future because there's a compelling reason to do so. There's a purpose, really, a deep purpose to moving towards this new future. So how can leaders build spiritual energy? We'll talk a little bit later about about stories and public narrative and engaging with the emotional side of connecting with people rather than the rational side. Mentioning the rational side, we'll go straight down to intellectual energy because this is very much about the rational thinking and convincing people that the future needs to change, that there is a change that we need to make in this team or in this service because there's a rational argument for it. There is an evidence base, for example. So you can really play to intellectual energy, and we often find when we run the analysis of energy in teams that intellectual energy is very high, that we know how to manage intellectual energy very well as leaders, and we focus very much on identifying the rational argument for the change that we want to see, and actually in co-developing what that rationale is all about. The final energy, which is at the centre of the model, is psychological energy. And this is where we feel that we are in a safe position to do things differently. Where we often see psychological energy play out is when individuals feel reserved about changing their behavior or about making something happen because of a fear of reprimand. And that fear of reprimand is instilled very much because the extrinsic motivators of avoiding punishment are more emphasized in our working lives than bringing out the intrinsic motivators. If we're in an environment where we feel safe to do things differently, we feel supported by those around us, we feel we understand and believe in the future change, we have a trust in the leadership and that people have got our backs, then we're much more likely to just be bold and be courageous and try something that's in line with the change that's really going to make a difference, but that it is different to what we currently do, that is outside of the status quo, and it's going to raise some eyebrows. So those are the 5 energies which we're going to talk around, and I'm not going to go into any detail on the questionnaire that's associated with this model, but just to say that that is the source of the data where one can actually look at leadership and the characteristics and the energies of leadership, compare that with the wider team, look at any gaps, and therefore look at those issues that need to be focused on in order to raise energy or build energy for change. So Peter Drucker was the guy who said that developing leaders' energy, self-awareness, is the first step. So actually, before you can even understand anybody else's energy, you've got to really have a good understanding of your own and really sort of do some self-reflection around this. Then we're in a position to start understanding the energy of those around us. And this tool, this energy tool, does allow us to do an analysis of our own energy because it isn't something that is part of our natural everyday language, so it's not necessarily something we're used to exploring with people. The next stage, of course, is then to understand the energies of those around you. And, empathy is commonly talked about these days as a really key leadership skill. This is a quote from Harper Lee, who said, you never really understand a person until you consider things from his point of view. And, this real understanding of where other people are coming from is a key one that some leaders spend a huge amount of time on actually understanding the perspective of the other person. And here's an example of somebody who did that, who spent a lot of time, Martin Luther King, who's much more known for his leadership in his campaigns and his podium quote of, I have a dream. But what's less known about him is the amount of time that he spent understanding the perspectives, the people that he represented. And in fact, to the point that he moved his whole family into a tenement building for 6 months to really live the lives of people that he was representing. So really investing time in empathy and in putting oneself in other people's shoes is a great way to develop an awareness of other people's energy. So what can you do? What can you do to understand, not just understand, but also then build up the energies of those around you? Could we sort of identify somebody in our team and say, yeah, I think I could tell you what really motivates this person. I think I can tell you what's at the heart of their spiritual energy, what their real purpose is. Do we have that kind of knowledge? Do we know what kind of social energy motivates them, how to get them engaged? That's going to differ, isn't it, for different people, depending on how extrovert or introvert you are, what kind of activities are going to engage you. Well, the first thing we can do is to look at your individual profile, and you can compare that with the team's profile. So the team profile in this instance, we can see that the energy of this team, if you look at the green line, you can see that the energy is quite high on physical and intellectual energy and is slightly lower on psychological, spiritual and social energy. And that is very common in the samples of teams that we speak to. However, when you look at the difference between the green line and the red line, you can see that these energies are really important. The big gaps are social, spiritual, and psychological energy. So there's a big gap in how motivated people feel in terms of their social, spiritual, and physical energy in this particular team. We'll ignore the blue line for now, and we'll just look over at the team leader's profile. So the team leader, the green line is missing here because it's actually underneath the red line, so you can't see it. So that means that the team leader has very high physical and intellectual energy. It's not surprising that they're able, therefore, to build up those energies in those around them, and that the team reflects that in terms of having higher intellectual and physical energy than the other energies. The team leader actually has quite high social and spiritual energy, but isn't aware necessarily that they can influence the social and spiritual energy of the others, and isn't aware that actually others' energy is lower on those two issues. The team leader also actually has slightly lower psychological energy, so they're not necessarily feeling in a safe place to make things change. And that is something that is for their personal development, actually, but they're in a great position, this leader is in a great position to build up social and spiritual energies of the team because it has a good level of energy, and also it is underneath the red line, which means that their level of social and spiritual energy is exactly where they want it to be. There are no gaps there for this team leader. For the team, however, there are gaps. They would like their social and spiritual energy and their psychological energy to be higher. So there is a role that that team leader has, both in terms of personal development, but also in terms of developing the team. So how could you go about that then? How can we manage energy for change in the team? Well, first of all, we've looked at comparing your individual energy profile with the team's individual profile to see where are the areas I can really contribute to this team. We can also look at tracking energy for change over time to see what kind of interventions work, and it's well worth testing out some new approaches quite quickly. For example, testing out using some 30-day cycles to increase social energy, for example, around, well, we'll give some examples in a moment. We could also have a conversation, or what we call randomized coffee trials, where you actually randomly put people together in pairs to have a discussion about their energy profiles and about how they would like to build on those energies, because there's no better way to identify what can be done to build energy than to ask that individual what it is that they would like to happen. Let's look at psychological energy. We often show this slide around how the world of work is changing. We've got a situation where knowledge was very much held within an elite few, and power, therefore, was held within that knowledge. Since then, we have the internet. We have everybody has access to knowledge. We have got a contribution. Everybody has a contribution to make in terms of constructing knowledge, and therefore power has moved away from a few people into a much bigger group. We're also, and as leaders, really, we've got an opportunity here to pull in that knowledge and to create open knowledge and to create those relationships and those connections between all of those who can make a contribution to change. So by harnessing new era power, we can help to build psychological energy by giving a voice, creating an environment of safety, and therefore building up an intrinsic motivation for people to engage in change. So one way we can do this, of course, is to just give permission within teams to say, I trust you to make these decisions. This is your area of expertise, and go for it. I will support you. Take that risk. Another way to do it is actually through actually having some structured time to discuss anxieties and things that don't feel too safe. But we don't necessarily have an opportunity to do that, do we? Often we see this kind of psychology going on in meetings where there's defensiveness, where there's there's this hanging on to old power where, don't you know that? That's because I hold that special knowledge. There's a sense of fear in many environments. But if we can create the space outside of our usual ways of working, as Google does to throw anxiety parties, we can actually have a space to just get some of the anxieties out into the open and start to, because they're really impeding the opportunity to make change happen. We can also work out loud as leaders. So, for example, we can help to share our work where others can see it, so that we're kind of reducing that suspicion of what are you doing with your time. We need to have some internal platforms perhaps for doing that. Our team uses WhatsApp to keep each other up to date on where we are and what we're doing and what's happening and what work we're working on. And indeed, just recording a presentation like this and sharing it with others is a way of working out loud. Even if things aren't perfect, it's worthwhile getting people's feedback in before you've got this polished result of a paper or whatever. But likewise, in order to reciprocate this and make this work, you've also got to give back and share and comment on other people's work, so give feedback, so that we're truly co-constructing knowledge and co-constructing change rather than leaving it up to an elite few who never seem to be able to get the intrinsic motivators of others to work. What about social energy? Well, we've created a team appreciation board, and this is another example of a team appreciation board created by the Speech and Language Therapy unit at Lincoln, in the stroke unit there. And this is a fantastic way to practice gratitude and appreciation, but also to really give each other feedback on what it is that you value about them, because people don't necessarily know what is valued, but to feel valued and to know exactly why really enhances that behaviour. Once you've identified what it is that you appreciate about something, they'll do much more of it. What can leaders do to build spiritual energy for change? Well, storytelling is a fantastic way to get people engaged in your key message. The thing is, you've got to keep telling the story. I have a friend who's a head teacher of a difficult school in Birmingham who's absolutely brilliant at this. She has a challenging job working in a very deprived community where most of the time she's dealing with social services and cases of child abuse, and it's a very difficult job, but she creates this incredible sense of purpose for the school and a wonderful sense of I really want to be here at this school because this is this is where I can believe in myself and believe in a new future for myself. So there's some fantastic storytellers out there as leaders, and maybe it's a natural leadership skill, but it's something worth developing as well. Stories, of course, connect with intrinsic motivation. They connect with emotionally compelling ideas, and that is going to draw people in. The public narrative is one method for developing a story around a key message, so if it is something that you feel less comfortable with in terms of developing a story, then it's worth looking up public narrative and developing a story around those 3 steps of looking at why the change is important to an individual, why it's important to the community, and why we need to act on this right now. So I've spoken to several team members about leaders that they have seen build good social energy, and I'm sure that you've experienced this too, but it's really worth making this happen as a leader, making this happen for other people, just getting people out for a celebratory lunch, one that you've paid for, or just getting everybody together for lunch. A kind of a treat, isn't it? But also having an away day where we can actually look at how people can work better together, so you actually take that time out of work and invest in people and make them feel valued. So informal social activities, as leaders, it's incredibly important to show up to the Christmas party, isn't it, or to be present and to be a part of the fun as well as part of the hard grind. And sharing personal information also really helps to bond with the team, and I've seen some leaders do this in an incredibly open and vulnerable way, and it's a great way to build up a sense that we're in this together. Psychological energy. Again, we've spoken about this, but somebody once also mentioned to me a CEO that they spoke to who says that he always tells people not to come to him to make decisions. You don't come to me for permission. You make those decisions yourself. You know, you're the specialist. So that whole approach that I'm not the controller of the knowledge, it doesn't reside with me, the power. This is your power to make the decisions, and I trust you to do that. So questions that we might consider as leaders are, how does energy show up at work? What's important in this team? And how can, what can we do more or less of the thing that's impacting on each of the energies? So look at the energy model, think about them, think about how you observe these 5 energies at work, talk to the team about what's important, and look at what we can do more of or less of. It's probably the case that there's quite a list of things we can do less of in order to start building up that intrinsic energy for change. As leaders, we can also build up our depleted energies. We looked at that individual's profile earlier on who had to build up their own psychological energy. So could they, for example, go and ask questions of others? How have you built up your sense of security given that this chain has lots of uncertainties? How can I build up my sense that this is safe? I mean, actually, why not have a plan B, so that you're not completely vulnerable? Spiritual energy, find out what other people think about the change, really get into grips with what motivates people about the change, because even if you do have high spiritual energy, developing that sense of energy, that sense of empathy rather, really understanding what motivates others will be key to your role as an energy orchestrator. You can also, of course, build up social energy by really getting a sense of what everybody values about each other. You could create a sort of a team well-being challenge, for example, where we're actually looking at building up social energy in our team. You could, spiritual energy, we talked about stories, share your stories, connect with emotional energy, ask lots of questions. Most of this understanding others' energies is about asking questions, but asking the right questions and building up that sense of trust so that these are questions that are okay to ask people around you. To finish off then, a great quote from Leo Tolstoy: all great literature is one of 2 stories. A man goes on a journey or a stranger comes to town. So we're either in one of those 2 situations, aren't we, when there's a change happening. We're either the one leading the change, getting excited about it, trying to bring people along with us, or we're the one who's been subjected to a change that's happening around us. We've got to get everybody onto that journey. And moving people out of that fear zone of somebody's come to my town, what's going on, to people actually being engaged in the change. And Charles Darwin also said, it's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor the most intelligent, but the most responsive to change. And that's particularly pertinent in today's NHS. Thank you.